Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. With me in the studio is just myself today. Eric is running around being the holly jolly man himself. We are rolling into the holidays, everybody. We're excited to spend some time with family. The best part about this time period is, a lot of you guys have the ability to sit down and actually think about what you want 2024 to look like. New Year's approaching. So make sure you guys are putting time on your calendar to ensure that you guys are ultimately looking at everything you need to get accomplished for 2024. We talked about in one of the last podcasts, ultimately, how right now is the most important time for you to start planning ahead. So you don't wait till January 1st to plan ahead. You do this now. And we did a podcast, I think probably a month ago, talking about this concept. So if you haven't done it yet, it's not too late. Make sure you do it. But I'm really excited to bring another clip from the Leadership Retreat to you guys. So we did something special this year at the Leadership Retreat. We collected questions from the audience. So we gave everybody a piece of paper and they wrote down questions that they wanted Eric and Shad and Brian from Tiny Rhino to answer. So specific leadership questions, business questions, those type of things, so that they could talk through those on stage. So what we're going to show you as a clip is part one of that leadership roundtable is what we called it. So I want you guys to tune in, start thinking of your own questions when you go into this. Listen to the answers, write down things. If you're in the car, make a note to go back and rewatch this so you guys can write everything down. So let's go ahead and roll the tape.
Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to answer some questions that you guys have, and I've been chosen to be the designated ringleader as the introvert, and these guys love to talk. So there'll be some times we'll have to shut it down. I'm not trying to be rude, but we got a lot of questions, and I want to make sure we get all the answers.
He said he's been chosen to be the moderator.
I chose myself
to
be
the
moderator.
himself. It was what it was. Okay, so.
By the way, this conversation happens all the time, and Shad and I talk a lot.
Yep.
But when Brian speaks, we listen. I'm telling you, that's when the greatness happens. So we're going to be.
Brian said, "Let's see if that holds true."
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure for the stage like this.
That's right.
All right, I got a great first question. Are y'all ready? Say I'm ready. All right, this is from Dr. Greg Cochran from Rivertown Dental.
Yeah.
This is for you, Eric.
Uh-oh.
When are you going to pop the question to Brayley? No, I'm just kidding. I made that whole thing up.
That was a great question.
I made that whole thing up. And I even asked her permission if I could do that on the stage, and she said yes. I love that girl. She's awesome.
Well, now.
All right, let's do it.
By the way, I think I heard her clear her throat.
Anytime now, son.
Just go ahead and answer that.
Here we go. All right, first real question. How can I scale leadership to a larger team and manage their growth and success, because I cannot always be present as the leader to coach and lead and inspire? So the question's about layered leadership. How do we get there, fellas?
Good. Let's start. Hop in, E.
I mean, this is ultimately what the Leadership Academy is about, and the idea of scalable leadership. This is your question, Greg? Because when we don't have a way to do things that's uniform, that's the challenge, is that core values is one way we've always used uniformity in leadership. And if you have core values, if you shove them in a shelf somewhere, or you put them in like the break room, that's not really core values. It's not living core values. But core values are an example of scalable leadership. They really are, because when you actually live a set of core values and you live them every day and you talk about them all the time and your leaders talk about them, believe it or not, your company actually manages itself.
Yep.
Because when there's a question of what to do here, it's like, well, we already know. We just follow these 5 things. That's why having fun is not a core value. It can't be. Because you're not always going to be fun. You can't always be fun, and that's not leadership. Leadership sometimes is dealing with difficult challenges. So one of the greatest questions is, what do our core values say about that? When you come into a difficult time, what do our core values say about that? When you ask that question, so when you have a uniform way of dealing with conflict, then it's scalable. It's like, this is how we deal with conflict. Okay, we can teach someone how to deal with conflict. We can teach them to use this form, this language, this set of core values, this way of doing things. We can teach that. We can teach ultimately how to create contingency plans and those types of things. So we can train leadership. We can say, when we have this problem, this is how we act. That's core values. We can train vision. We can expand our vision and share it often. So you have to have process. And the problem is that and I always say this is like the HR people, as much as I love HR people, kind of messed up this stuff.
Yeah.
Because core values are actually what we live by, but what happens is HR people made them fluffy so we don't treat them the way they should be treated. If your friend ever made you upset, it's because they violated your core values. If your spouse made you upset, it's probably because they violated your core values. If your coworker made you upset, it's probably because they violated your core values. But that's ultimately leadership. So what I would say is this, is that you have to have a uniform way of doing things in your vision, in your core values, in the way we handle difficult situations with a relationship, with ultimately how do we deal with conflict in a uniform manner, because it can't be different from each office. And ultimately, then as we start to say, hey, this is how results are a part of leadership too.
Right.
Are we uniform about how we get results, how we celebrate success? So it has to be created, trained, taught, and talked about often.
I think too, as the high level leader, you got to start to decide what is the only work that you should be doing.
Yeah.
And then once you decide what work you should be doing, and you have that list of this is the work that I should be giving all of my energy and time to, and then everything else then has to be under a sense of priority. And then you got to find the capacity inside of your team for people underneath you. Can you hand off and delegate? When you delegate, what you're saying is, I can give this to somebody because they have the skill and the talent and the capacity to execute the work, but I don't have to think about it. All I have to do is go back and inspect every once in a while. Other people are going to need different kinds of leadership. They're going to need situational leadership where you're having to go in and coach them and maybe give them some support. So you got to find what are the capacity levels of the people that you can hand those specific things that you can't do anymore, and you have to let go. And I think a lot of times leaders, when you're building something big, you're doing, and there's a shift that has to take place where you go from doing the technical work and then you hand it off to somebody else to do the technical work, because leaders get work done through other people, and then you're building a layered system inside of that organization.
That's right. And I think where a challenge with this comes from, right, is we know to build systems and processes around the tactical things we do in business, but we don't build enough systems and processes around who we are, right? And leadership at the end of the day is influence, which means, hey, I have intention, and what I need to be able to do is move influence through, and what gets measured gets managed. So with core values, where a lot of times I believe you lose the ability to scale those, is there's no systemic approach to the fact that there's accountability, right? This is like civil law. This is how two cities can be beside each other, but the culture of the cities are very different. But the leadership helps establish what the culture is going to be. If you're in a house here and you're in a house here, you can be there minding your business, but there's a law that says, hey, you can't just go over there and break in that person's house and take it. That's not tolerated, right? So by having laws that are measured, that are managed, that support the leadership infrastructure, that support the influence, so that it can be handed off. The owner's ideal for the organization can be handed off, and the value can be managed because there's processes that support the accountability of following through on being a leader and following leadership based on the values.
One last thought, hire leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Hire leaders. When you're in your interview process, are you actually looking for their leadership? Are you looking for their past leadership experience? Are you looking for difficult situations they've handled? I mean, you can train everybody up. I mean, everyone continues to grow in their leadership and their leadership growth, but you might want to bring some leaders up alongside you that already have a propensity towards leadership and that can help you and actually even teach you things about leadership. So you might want to think about in your hiring process to hire people that are leaders.
I think that's a great point. Hire leaders that can teach you something. I think so many times we're afraid to hire people that are smarter than us, but it's always a danger when you're the smartest person in the room. You want to hire leaders that are better than you and smarter than you and can come up underneath your weak spots and be stronger than you in areas. That doesn't mean that you're a weak leader and that you don't have the potential to lead that person. If you'll lead that person through your core values, if you'll lead that person through modeling the behavior that you want modeled, if you will be caring and genuine about your relationship with them, they'll follow you to the death. You don't have to be smarter than everybody in the room. You want to get as many smart leaders as possible around you. Talent is incredibly important.
That's good.
Next
Great
question. Ready?
Question.
We're in a transition phase. This is great. Transitions. Everybody's in transition phase. We're in a transition phase in our practice, getting ready to implement some policies and procedure changes. What's the best way to roll that out and get the entire team on board?
I should go first.
All right, so in the transition phase, I think it's a phase in. Like, change isn't easy for people. And I loved what Molly Fletcher was saying earlier, right? We have 80,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of them are automatic.
Yeah.
So it's just an automation process. And when we show up and we do work a certain way every day, we begin to build routines. And what do our brains do? It delegates to second nature, right? It delegates to, hey, this is what I go through every day. So I think anytime that there's a new standard that's going to be introduced, the key to buy-in is to not show up one day and say, hey guys, guess what? Everything is different now. Because you have to accommodate the ability of adjusting to new routines and behaviors and new expectations. So I think with clarity as to why you're doing it, not just what you're doing, is the key. Hey, this is why we're going. And that you lead into it appropriately by getting the team's level of ownership and buy-in and feedback in the process prior to enacting it, prior to putting it into place. This is why we're doing this. But wrap it around vision. Don't miss the opportunity to just change for the sake of change, because all that is exhausting. But when you say, hey, because we're doing this right now with our organization, we're restructuring our operational flow, and I'm telling you, it's not easy. It's not easy. And there's natural resistance to change. So when you can wrap it to a better future, when you can point towards, hey, this is who we're becoming. Hey, these are insights that we have found. And you get that buy-in as a tribe prior to it. What you do is give yourself the margin of grace, and you're giving team members a margin of grace to adapt to a new way of doing things. But once you enact it, you're also turning around, I think, and putting a timeline of what it looks like to see it go into place, that you're not in a transition phase forever, because that you can just start that loop, right, and just keep transitioning and never actually finish it. So make it about vision, get buy-in prior to pulling it off, and then give yourself a timeline for everybody to say, hey, we're going to pull this off, and within 90 days, or whatever it is, within 90 days, we're going to be experts at this, and you celebrate the progress along the way.
Let me just add to that real quick, because I think there's power in language, and 70% of people resist change automatically. If you're on the DISC profile and you're an S or a C, you automatically resist change. I'm wired like a DC. I'm 3% of the population. I love change. I thrive on change. I long for change all the time. And when you have a leader that loves change and you have a group of people that do not like change, there's oftentimes a separation that can take place between the leader and the followers. And you don't know why there's a dissonance, but the dissonance is because you're thriving on change and they're fighting you internally all the time. And so language is incredibly important. On top of that, instead of calling it change, you call it growth. No one wants to change, but everybody loves to grow, right? And so it's how you package the language. It's how you move people through the fear. And then the other thing is make it about them. That when you're getting ready to institute policies and procedures, no, you're about to give a new direction to your team where you're all going to grow together in one direction, and this is going to change your life and your work environment, and we're going to have more fun in this place than we've ever had. We're going to do more, be more, and all of a sudden now it becomes inspo, right? It's inspiration instead of this dreadful thing of just a list of rules that we now have to follow and we all have to behave. Like, it's just flip the paradigm in how you present it and do it all at one time. Make a big deal about it, celebrate it, and it can be really, really powerful. Sorry, did I talk too much?
That's awesome. That's good. That's good. It's great.
Hey, leader, make change about the team, too. Don't make it about you. Like when you're doing these transitions, clarity of vision and insight. Hey, I'm excited. This is where we're going, and this is what this is going to mean for us. You know what I'm saying? So, like, we were talking about getting that early buy-in to be like, this is how we become better together. This is how we grow, like you said. So, absolutely.
Thank you.
I think that what you guys said is great. It's phenomenal. I think that you have to realize that conversation around vision, the conversation around growth, it's a conversation on culture. Are you a growth culture? Do you believe in growth as a culture? If you believe in a growth as a culture and you want to be part of something, because that's why direction's so important. If I believe come into your company and I come into your business and I can thrive here and I can become more here and I can create here and this is the vision and this is my license, this is where I'm going, then all of a sudden you ask me to do this and change it. Like, look, hey, Eric, this is part of growth, and if we do this, this is what the outcome's going to be. And listen, we're going to continue to change. We're always going to change because we're always going to try to get better. And so, look, I know it's hard because the way we're naturally wired is we don't love change, but here's the thing, at this practice, at this time, we're always going to be growing. We're always going to be coming. And look, we need your help.
That's it.
Like, ask for help. Like, ask for people to lean in because this is not a dictatorship. You're a team. That's why I don't like the word employee. Like, we're a team. And we do this together. And we lean in together and we help each other because that's why we all got to know where we're going.
That's right.
Because we don't know where we're going. It's like if I walked in any process, any time, and I walked in and you were just like, hey, here's what we're going to do. Today, we're going to change all of our software.
Wait, what?
Why are we changing our software? Because. Because why? Because it's better. Well, why is it better? Because the rep said it was.
Because I went to a conference and I have a new idea. Right?
Yeah. And you go, hold on. What? Hold on. Wait. What? Don't worry, because we're changing all the X-rays and everything else too. And you go. I don't even understand what this doesn't. This will never even work. I don't. And so, if that ever happens, is you're not ultimately bringing people into the conversation of why you're doing what you're doing, what you're building, and how they're part of it. Because if we feel like we're all in the Bronco together, if we're all driving in the same direction, hey, we got this. I'm on board. I'm helping you. You're helping me. We're all in this game together. But if it's independent, if I'm outside the Bronco and you're flying by me and just asking me to hold on to the hitch, I'm going to be screaming the whole time. So you need to understand this is why vision is so powerful, and the best leaders know how to ultimately create vision in a business is because without vision, without direction, people will not jump on board. They'd have no reason to do so outside of a paycheck.
That's right.
You got to bring them in the conversation.
That's good.
That's
good.
You made the joke, but it's actually true. Like, because I heard everybody like do the little rumble when you said it. Like, you went to a conference and you come back and then everything starts to change.
No, that's very true in our industry.
And the reason that happens is because there's not a consistent, coherent vision already established. And what you're doing is you're borrowing vision from other people. And you think that you can just piggyback off the success of somebody else's good idea without doing the work that it actually takes to make that a reality inside your own organization. So if you have your own coherent vision, that's great, and you can take ideas and that can feed your vision, but it doesn't confuse everybody on your team, so it's like haphazardness that every time you go somewhere and bring something back, a whole new system is built, a whole new software is being installed, something else is going to take place, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. People can't breathe, they can't keep up, your lives are already too busy inside the op. Imagine all of that happening every time you go to a conference in a year, right? So getting that coherence down of your vision and then letting ideas feed it over time where it makes sense and where there's a DNA match to what you're already doing so that it doesn't feel so schizophrenic inside the organization.
And I'll tell you this, I'll give you an example inside a tower, and I was sharing this yesterday. And so we were ultimately, I'm a 9 quick start, so that means I have ideas all the time. He's a 10, by the way.
Yeah, we're liabilities.
So if you're like a 9 or 10 quick start, that means everything's an opportunity, by the way.
Yep.
There's always something new. There's always something great. By the way, the next great thing is just around the corner. So trust me, if you think we're always bringing opportunities. So we have to be very careful when we bring in opportunities because, by the way, people that are 9 and 10 quick starts, we think out loud. So we don't actually mean put it in action. We're just talking. And you think we mean to go change everything, and we don't. And so ultimately speaking, so then from a leadership standpoint, we have to be very careful when we say go. Because if we say go every day, we'll ultimately destroy the organization. So we have to be very, very, very careful. But very selectively, I have a leadership team. We have an amazing leadership team at Tower. And I don't, I listen. I ask questions. Hey, what do you think? What do you think? Hey, should we do this? So I don't just make decisions myself. We make them as a team. But then, of course, sometimes I have to, as the leader, say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. Sometimes it's somebody else. But I remember a conversation with Melissa being, a CPA, right? Head of our accounting and CFO, who's going to be more of a fact finder. I think she said 9 fact finder. And she looked at me on a conversation, we talked about this yesterday, and she said, you know what? I'm going to agree with Eric on this one. Because when he says, and he's convicted about something, and he says go, he's usually right. She didn't say all the ways right, by the way.
Usually.
She said usually
That's
right. And she's
a fact finder.
She said, that's right, fact finders say usually. I won't get it all the time. So she said, I agree with Eric. And by the way, it turned out to be it was an amazing decision. It was amazing. So I tell you that to say this. There's no authoritarian regime. We're making things together as a team. And when you show consistency over time, bringing people into the conversation, sharing vision, sharing where you're going as an organization, letting people have a say, and then ultimately speaking, when they start to see your direction and when you ultimately can lead them consistently over time, and they can see your consistency of leadership, when you implement that change over time consistently, when you can show that your behaviors, this is why I say consistency equals trust.
Right.
If you're consistent, I'll trust you. If you change and change and change, I have no idea who I'm talking to. That's why you need to make sure there's consistency over locations as well. Because if you don't have consistency in leadership, no one knows what to trust. But if you can be consistent in your leadership, if you can stay on course, then when you need to make the difficult, remember I said yesterday, leadership capital? In that moment, I pulled some leadership capital. And so in that moment, Melissa looked at me and she said, he's built enough leadership capital up with me that I'm ultimately going to take his side. Right. So when we're consistent in our leadership, I'm telling you this stuff matters, because when I bring somebody in the conversation, I allow them to understand the vision, I give them the opportunity for feedback, and then ultimately when I can show successful leadership over time consistently, you'll be surprised what people will do for you.
That's right.
That leads right into the next question. How do you get great ideas into the organization? Like, people know that great things happen at the idea moment, like when it starts to germinate. How do you get those ideas pumping through your organization without creating chaos?
That's not for us to answer.
I'm like, I didn't know how to get a new idea in every 15 minutes, if that's what you guys was.
Honestly, I'd like for you to start that, Brian. Why don't you answer that?
How I would answer that is we operate by a rule inside of Tiny Rhino that the best idea wins. We don't care where it comes from. It can come from the person that has just been hired 5 days ago, or it can come from Shad or myself. It doesn't matter where the idea comes from. We're looking for the best idea. If Shad and I have an idea of where we're going as the visionary architect for our organization, one of the things that we've learned is not to speak first. That when you go into a meeting with an idea, you kind of set the framework and then you let other people talk, because the moment you as the senior leader say something, then they have to overcome what you said about that idea. Right. They already know your position and where you want to go with it, so they feel like, why would I even bother? Right. Why would I even bother sharing my idea? And they're scared and intimidated, and they don't want to be wrong, and then if you react negatively to what they say, then all of a sudden you're shutting them down and they'll never talk again. So it's important to let your people talk, but it's also important to guide that conversation. You as the senior leader or senior leaders know where you're taking the conversation. Just guide that conversation towards that direction, and you may, inside of that conversation, see your idea get come into fullness. You may change your idea, or you may scrap your idea altogether because someone's come up with a new one, and it could have been the girl you just hired last Monday. Like, you just don't know where it's coming from. So being a listener is really, really important, because as leaders, we love to talk. We love to talk. Even if you're an introvert leader, you love to talk. As you've noticed, I've kind of talked more than I even thought I would. So you just have to learn to listen, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's about a value system of how ideas are managed as well. So, like, if you're bringing an idea, if we're strategizing together collectively with team or whomever, and the idea is that this is an idea session. We're bringing ideas to the table. First of all, there's no bad ideas if you're open currency up. People need to be able to be vulnerable and to throw up bad ideas without dismissal.
Right.
Because that'll shut them down quickly.
Don't do that to
That's right. And don't stop an idea the first moment somebody presents it either. Well, that would never work, you know.
We don't do it that way.
That's right.
Don't do that.
And it's not even always the appropriate question. First appropriate question is not even always, well, how would we do that, right? It's about germinating the value of the idea itself. But I think a biggie is that if you present ideas, like if you're a trusted conversation, if you're trusted to be part of a conversation where ideas are being presented, first of all, create those environments. If you want ideas, guys, like you want to know how to make your hygiene department better, talk to your hygienists, right? They're in it. But in those types of conversations, as you're doing it, it also is no devil's advocate. You're not allowed to drop a snake in the room and not take ownership of it. So you can't be like, well, here's just a thought. What if they're playing devil's advocate and be like, well, why are you creating turmoil in the middle of this conversation if you're not even wanting to own the idea, right? It's the currency of we're coming with thoughts that we're at least willing to try to own to see if this would work. I'm not going to throw up an opposition idea to what you're saying and be like, that's not really my position.
And by the way, your idea does not define you. Like, just because you throw out an idea that gets turned down doesn't mean that your idea was wrong. It just means maybe not now.
Right.
Or maybe it's not appropriate for this season, but it may come back up a year or two from now, and they use that. So don't get, like, butt hurt or go and internalize the fact that we didn't do what you suggested. That's not a negative thing. Just allow your ideas to flow and just know you're adding value through the process.
And it might be that your idea wasn't even acted on and it was the right idea.
Yeah. That's
right?
right.
And
Sometimes
then
the leaders miss it. That's
yeah,
right.
that sometimes the leaders will miss it. And just know this, like you in trusted guys, like build trust among your team. Like if you're leading them, build trust among them so they can feel like they can trust their leadership, because sometimes you are going to make the wrong decision. Sometimes you're going to make the wrong call, and you don't need your team behind you being like, well, I told you. Right. You idiot. You don't need that. No, what it is, like have conversation. To be like I have this with my children, and they grow up all the time. They perfectly realize that their dad may be borderline dumb. They don't know, but the reason being is because the honesty to be like, I will make the decision. Here's what I need you to do. I just need you to go with me on this and trust me on this, right? And if it is the wrong decision, we will also make we'll work that out when the time is right. But if I'm the owner, the onus is on me, and if I'm wrong about it, right, it costs me.
You have to be two things. It's making me think of two things. One is, as a leader, though, you have to be vulnerable, because it made me think of that, which is to say, like, I got it wrong. It's okay to say I got it wrong.
That's right.
It's okay to say I tried and it just didn't work out. Yeah. I thought it was going to work and it didn't. And be interested.
That's good.
Because, I think sometimes as we grow in scale, we sometimes become not as interested as things we should have been interested in. What I mean by that is so much of innovation actually happens at the bottom of the organization.
Yeah.
And as we grow in scale, we move away from that of the bottom of the organization and we start to delegate. And as we delegate, we start to lose touch with what's happening ultimately on the ground level of our organization. Mm-hmm. And I remember being 20 years old in a weapons magazine off the coast of Iraq and thinking to myself, I have not seen one officer or chief in this magazine in 7 months. Not one khaki, not one leader coming downstairs one time to ask, hey, what's really going on down in this magazine? Not one person. And the reason why is because they sat there having their cups of coffee in some big office somewhere, wearing their khaki uniforms, and never were interested on what was truly happening down below. Don't lose touch with what's happening below decks.
So good.
I'm telling you, there's
That's
so much
good.
innovation there. So much innovation.
Yeah, that's good. Great question. Hey, you guys enjoying this? Cool. That's awesome. 7 of you are.
As you grow as a leader and your organization grows, how do you avoid burnout as well as not sacrifice somewhere else in your life but continue to grow?
So I might not be the right person to ask this question to. So I'm not a big balance fan. Can I say that?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I'm not.
I agree.
Like I think the word balance is used by people who really want to keep you mediocre. Like I don't want to have a balanced personal relationship. I don't want to have a balanced health. I don't want to have a balanced career. Like I just think balanced is a word that's overused and it's a mediocre word at best. Yeah. The truth is greatness happens at the extremes. That's just a fact. Like go look at the best people, the best athletes. The best of the best will never say, I've just got perfect balance. That's how I became great. It's just not true. Greatness happens at the extremes. Now, managing the extremes, that's a little bit different. Yeah. So you have to understand when you get burnt out, if you've gotten burnt out, you're not doing anyone any favors ever.
That's right.
The person who says, like, I'm just going to keep going and going and going and going and going, you are hurting everyone.
Yeah. Yep.
So know that greatness happens at the extremes. Know that. but also know you need a break.
Yep.
And take the break. There's Sunday. Can you imagine me trying to settle down for a day, like just relaxing? There are days, and this is a true story, like it'll be a Sunday. I have to force myself to sit on that damn couch and not move for an entire day. Now, for some of you, that's just called Saturday. For me, that's called hell.
Well, it's college football season, so it's fair, right?
Yeah.
Come on.
Or football.
It's tough. Like, I'm serious. Like, it's tough for me to sit on a couch. Like, I don't watch TV. It's not my thing. I don't, you know? And so it's hard for me to watch a show. I'd never watch a movie on TV. That would never happen in a million years because I can't sit there for 2 hours. So occasionally I have to force myself on a Sunday to, like, sit there and watch a TV. Now, the thing about that is I know what I'm doing is helping my team. I know what I'm doing is helping my family.
That's right.
I know what I'm doing is helping all those around me. I have to force myself to take a break, to take a day for me, to take a day away from the world. So here's what I'll tell you. Look, greatness happens at the extremes, but be willing and make sure you take a break. Rest. Go, run full speed, relax. Run full speed, relax. Give your relationship everything you've got. Breathe. Like, it's okay. But that's what happens. There is no way you can have an amazing life with balance.
Right.
Because you're going to have a mediocre marriage and a mediocre career and a mediocre income because you believe in balance. And balance is just a word that people use as an excuse. And by the way, remember I was telling you about self-imposed limitations earlier? This is what they'll do. You know, you're working too hard. Don't you feel like you need some balance? Oh, you can't. When is enough? You need balance. You know, why are you trying so hard? You need balance. Look, go look at the person who told you that you need balance. Look at their marriage. Look at their career. Look at their income. And decide, is that truly what you want? Go with greatness and find out what greatness does. Greatness works at the extremes and then finds time to rest. And that's what I would say.
That's good.
Yeah, and it's resource allocation, right? It's about it requires a lot more. Like I'm with you on that. There is really no such thing as balance. There's commitment, and you go all in. And it's also understanding the signs, right? And to know that sometimes we get in a zone and we'll hurt ourselves. And we need relationships in us that says, hey, I know it feels like you should be working around the clock, right? We had some of those conversations even early in the year, right? But to give permission to the people around you to look for the warning signs of it. You know, I didn't do this well in the pandemic, and it was probably the worst year of my life. Like, I impacted my health and things like that because my response was like, oh, crap. You know, we were a year and a half old. We were the fastest growing marketing company in the industry, but it was only performance side. And when it hit within 3 days, our entire company went to zero in receivables, $0. And we're like, well, we got this team we just hired. We got this, we got that, we got, you know. So I just lowered my head, and all I did was nearly kill myself, and I did a very poor job of upholding my half of our partnership during that time because I felt like I was just supposed to lower my head and grind it out. And it was a lot of crazy, chaotic time, and it was just bad decisions. It was bad decisions. It was bad leadership. It was bad self-leadership to think that that was the appropriate answer.
I want to say this because I want to make sure I got my point across correctly. Remember yesterday I was talking about being intentional about time, slowing down a day.
That's right.
Right? Making sure that the day doesn't get by you. So when you hear me say extremes, I don't mean working 14-hour days. That's not what I said. If you heard that, please don't take that's not what I said. Because you can be intentional and work for 4 hours. Okay? You can be extreme and work for 3 hours. Okay? You know, for some of you haven't taken your spouse on a date in 3 months, right? It's not extreme to go once a week, right? So ultimately what I'm trying to say is this, is that you got to be intentional, but the idea of saying, well, I'm only going to give a little bit of effort or so much effort to my career and only so much effort to my relationship and only so much effort to my fitness because I want to have balance in my life is just a poor way to look at it. if you go back to the 80-20 rule, what I was talking about on day one, which is the Pareto principle, that 80% of your results happen from 20% of your effort.
That's right.
So if you're really intentional and you understand that greatness happens at the extremes, but ultimately 20% of your input gets 80%. So for instance, let's say the date night thing I just said. It doesn't take 100% effort to take your spouse on a date. It just doesn't. Right. It doesn't take 100% effort to plan something once a week. That's just not. It doesn't take 100% effort. You know how hard it is to buy your spouse flowers? How many of you have don't raise your hand. If you have an assistant, ask them. Other than that, it's like this. I guess we don't have that anymore. It's like this.
Right.
Just dated myself. Hey, I want to order some flowers. Here's my credit card number. Actually, you can just do this. So to act like it's extreme, that's 20%, right? It's just a small effort. Say, well, I just don't have time to order. It took you 3 minutes. Right. It's 3 minutes. But I guarantee you, if all of a sudden that football game, I guarantee if Ohio State and Michigan were playing and the tickets were half off, I guarantee you all of a sudden priority determines capacity. So what I'm saying is...
Brian's like, don't you go
I
there.
have front row seats, baby.
Don't.
That's right.
So let's take on leadership, but what I want to say is I just want to make sure I reiterate this. Look, greatness happens at the extremes. Get great at the 20% that gives 80% of the results. Know when to rest, know what to focus, be intentional with your time, and I'm telling you, watch what happens. You will have time for your family. You will have time for your fitness. You will have time for your career. You will have time for your wealth because you're intentional. And everything you're doing will seem to the average person like it's an extreme, but I promise you, you'll be more rested and you'll accelerate your entire life.
That's right. Yep.
So good.
It's good.
We've heard a lot the last couple of days about time and calendar. I've kind of said this little phrase forever. If you don't own your calendar will own you. And so it's important to make sure that you set a rhythm for your life, where what feeds your energy, what makes you go hard, and then know when to stop. Because there is a thing called the law of diminishing returns. Like there's days when Shad and I will be in the office for, an extended period of time, and we'll go beyond normal hours, and we'll start moving into the evening. We'll look and we'll say, we got a deadline or something. We're like, we just need to shut it down because everything from here on is just going to be weak sauce. It's not going to do any good because the law of diminishing returns have kicked in. We can't think clearly. We don't have the energy. We're tired. We've already been through it. We just got to shut it down and do better in the morning, and that's what we do. And what you have to realize is that you're not invincible, and you don't have to be perfect, and you do have limits. You need to know what those limits are, and there's sometimes you have to push past your limits, and there's sometimes you have to surrender to your limits.
Yeah.
And I think just knowing that and knowing yourself and knowing how you work best is really, really important to keep the rhythm, not the balance, but the rhythm of your life and the way that you want it to go.
Quick 30, 40-second addition to that is do healthy things with your life, and you will have better control of your energy.
That's right.
A good way to prevent burnout is don't eat the wrong things. Go to bed appropriately, right? Work out. Like, take your vitamins. Like, if those fundamental basics are not in place, you can't maintain your energy just in day-to-day life in the appropriate way because you're missing things like dopamine and serotonin, the things that your body provides for you to be able to function with clarity and effectiveness in creating things. So, in order to prevent burnout, if those things do not exist in your life, and here's the thing, excuses, if we can be like, I do it too, and I will tell you, I'm weak if I give myself an excuse. I'm being weak when I excuse. I don't feel like working out today. Well, then you are not just choosing to be a healthy person.
Brian was at the gym at 10 p.m. last night.
Guess who was not? I gave myself an excuse. No, I just had wisdom. I wasn't going at 10 o'clock. That's it. Do healthy things. That helps, and then know that you only have so much energy anyway. Appropriate your energy appropriately and put people around you to help carry the appropriate things.
Love that.
Energies go.
Love that.
That's really good.
All right, so that is just kind of a little taste off of the buffet, I would say. That is ultimately part one. So it was a very long Q&A. So what we're going to do is next week, we're actually going to release part two. So part two will come at you guys. So it'll be a fresh new thing of questions, the answers, everything like that. So make sure you rewatch this episode. Go share it with a colleague. I'm sure they've had these questions that the audience members had. Make sure you guys are spending time on your goals for next year. Make sure you're always thinking about leadership. Make sure to like, subscribe, share with friends. Happy holidays, everyone. Can't wait for the new year. Reach out to us if you guys need us. We'll talk to you next time.